It's recording because I can see that circle around the thing.
Oh,
Now that we know that that's an indication. Can we
Yes.
see those mountains back there? Look, we
Yeah,
don't. We can cut our heads
oh.
off, but look at that beautiful stuff.
I know.
Look at that. Oh,
This place is just amazing. The sun is out. Elizabeth and I were just saying it's warm here.
Yes.
The heat from the sun seeps into your bones. It feels so good.
so good.
So good.
Right?
But we're here to talk about transparency and opacity in paint.
And we're coming to you from the middle of the road, so we have to
We
get
are.
this done rather quickly.
So, you've seen us use Amsterdam acrylics, the Royal Talens Amsterdam acrylic paints quite often. And one of the things that you might not be aware of is that there are varying transparencies in Amsterdam acrylic paints. And so you'll see this in the video. You have transparent, semi-transparent, semi-opaque, and opaque. And I'm going to explain that. It's very brief. It's not rocket science, trust me.
It's not a college course.
No, it's not. But Elizabeth is going to show you how to take advantage of the various transparencies to create layered prints that almost glow, because there are so many layers that the color comes up through. And when you use like a semi-opaque, which is what I think you used just before the opaque, it gets colored a little bit by the underlying colors, and it doesn't look like what's in the tube. So there's all of this interplay of color and transparency and opacity that I never really thought about, but she's the artist, she's the fine artist, and of course she thinks about this all the time.
I think about these things, and how I explain it to my students is that transparent paints are like stained glass.
Yep.
And if you stack yellow stained glass over blue stained glass and you look through it, it's going to look like it's green, because those transparent layers multiply with each other. So that's why that ultramarine blue
Yes.
didn't really look blue, because it was transparent layered over browns.
Yes, and it didn't change it in a bad way, but it absolutely changes it. And so Elizabeth will show you how to think about opacity and transparency, how it affects the way you apply your layers, and how you can build so that you can still see the good stuff underneath.
And how you live your life.
There is that too, yes. So the other thing that you'll see, because not all paint is made available with transparency indicators on it, you can create your own. So the other thing that you'll see that helps you understand transparency, and of course now the wind is going to blow my dictionary paper. You want to hold that?
Encyclopedia pages.
Yeah, that's them. So we have this, and you can see the various transparencies and how it affects the amount of text that you can see through it. And I did the same thing so I've got Dina Wakely and 2 Finnebear paints, and I did the same thing and you can do this, which will give you an idea of how transparent or not a particular color is, and then you can use that to your own benefit. Or you can just throw color around and have a good time.
I was just going to say, Barb likes to make charts and
It's my analytical nature.
yeah, charts and notes
swatches.
and swatches. And
Yeah.
me, I just put it down, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, but you have the luxury of doing that with years of experience.
Yes.
And that's the other thing to remember. You have to play and you have to fail sometimes before you learn about what not to do, and that's just as important as what to do.
Oh yeah, I learned all about the transparency and the layering through practice. I always say the learning is in the doing.
Yep, absolutely.
So
Shall
anyway,
we go do?
Speaking of doing,
Let's go do.
let's go do it.
All right. If you've watched many of our videos, you've seen Elizabeth and I work with the Royal Talens Amsterdam acrylic paint a lot. We bring these 20 mil tubes because they are very convenient for travel. There's tons of paint in them and they work really well. One of the things that we thought would be very helpful, and we certainly use this when we're playing around, is to understand what these markings on the tubes mean. So if you look at this tube, you can see that open square, then there is a square with a line through it, and then you have a square that is actually a half triangle because half of it is blackened, and then you have one that's completely covered. So what we have, and what my little cheat sheet here shows you, is that when you're looking at the open square, you're looking at a transparent paint, and here's primary magenta, which is a transparent paint. When you have an open square with just a line through it, it's semi-transparent. Permanent blue violet is an example of that. When you have that half square triangle filled in, it's a semi-opaque paint, and that's Azo Orange, happens to be an example. And then an opaque is a fully filled in square, and turquoise blue is one of the opaque colors. Now you might be wondering what the difference is between semi-transparent and semi-opaque, and I had to look it up because I wasn't entirely positive. With a semi-transparent paint, it lets more of the light through and it only blocks a little bit. With a semi-opaque paint, it's just the opposite. It tends to block more of the light and only lets a little bit of it through. So opaque is very obviously, it's opaque, and then transparent, we all know what that means. So I thought it would be interesting to see what these four colors look like when you have actually something to see through. So this is just a piece of our dictionary paper, and I used each of them. Now I'll be honest, part of the difference between what you see with permanent blue violet, which is a semi-transparent, and azo orange, which is a semi-opaque, part of this is the depth of the hue and why it's covering a little bit more. And there's also some user influence here, how much of the paint I put down. There's all these things that are variable, but I thought that it was important to kind of see what these look like. And so the difference between transparent and opaque is very obvious. But again, here, when we look at the semi-transparent and the semi-opaque, there's a little bit of variation. But you play and you learn, and you're going to see Elizabeth work with all of this, and she's going to create an amazing print that takes into account not just opacity or the lack thereof, but she's going to talk a little bit about hue and why lighter colors matter and how the underlying colors can affect what you put on top of it, especially if it's a transparent paint. Now, stepping outside of the Amsterdam acrylic line, I grabbed 3 random paints. Dina Wakley's Blackberry. I have Finnabair Butterfly Spells, and then this is a Sparks, and then the Finnabair Opal Magic in teal pink. And I thought it would be fun, even though none of these paints come with these kinds of opacity designations, I thought it would be fun to see what they look like. So again, you can see them here on the card against white, but it's when, and let's see if I can bring this up, it's when you put them on top of something where you can see what's underneath that you can really observe the difference. So this Blackberry is pretty darn opaque. When we look at the butterfly spells, and I'm just trying to see about the glare here, when we look at the butterfly spells, you can see through it a little bit, but it's very obvious that the Opal Magic, which is an interference paint, is more transparent. Now, you can affect transparency in a couple of ways. The first is how many layers you apply. Obviously, with an opaque paint, typically one layer would be enough to cover, but you can get more opacity by applying layers on top of dry layers. And with that said, you can thin paint out with a little bit of water and affect the transparency. So even if you need something with a little bit more transparency and you don't have it handy, you can spread that paint out a little bit thinner or just add a little tiny bit of water to thin it out a little bit. And so here are these 3 samples. Well, actually, it's not all of these 3. So this is sap green, which is semi-transparent, and this is one of Tim's. It's part of his ideology line. I honestly don't remember what they came from, but you can see the text through there. And then this is the Opal Magic in teal pink, and you can see the text through it. And then when I bring in the Sparks, now obviously there's some glare that's happening here, but you can also see through this. So you have lots of options, and the choices that you make really do affect the outcome that you see.
Okay, so what I'm going to demonstrate is how to create a layered print that takes advantage of transparent, semi-transparent, and opaque colors. And the importance of understanding transparent versus semi-transparent and opaque in layering. So the colors that I have, this is an opaque color called Yellow Ochre. This is a semi-transparent color called Burnt Umber. This one is Permanent Red Violet, and it's transparent. This one is Burnt Sienna, and it's semi-transparent. This one is Ultramarine, and it is transparent. And this one is Turquoise Blue, and it is opaque. All right. So I'm going to be working on my sketch rice paper pad and my 9x11 gel plate. I'm going to keep a sheet for ghost prints and roll-offs and a sheet to create the print. So the first color is opaque. And for opaque, we're going to start on the bottom layer with that. We can build all kinds of layers on top of an opaque paint. But we cannot put an opaque paint on top of our layers because opaque means you don't see through it. So we'll spread this paint out in a nice, thin, even layer. And we'll take the rice paper with the smooth side down on the gel plate and we'll print a solid. So we have a nice solid. I have a little divot in the corner of my gel plate, so if I can see if I can pick up some more color there. Pretty good. And then I'll use this cleanup sheet to pull the rest of the paint. And we're pretty much back to clean here. Okay, so then the next layer that we're going to use is the semi-transparent, and that is the burnt umber. And we're gonna start with a medium-size opening stencil from my patterns for layering. So this is a dark color, but because it is semi-transparent, it's going to be a little less bold on the yellow ochre. So we'll print that onto our solid base sheet, and we'll use our fingertips to get into all the openings and the spaces of that stencil. We'll have a look and make sure we get a good impression. And you can see that that shows up over the yellow ochre, and it's our first layer. So it's good to use a semi-transparent on the second layer because it's not going to block out anything at all underneath it. And now we're going to move to transparent as we layer on top of that. So I'm just going to clean that up, that ghost print up with my cleanup sheet. And we'll wipe the rest of that off. Okay, so the next layer that we're going to do is a transparent color, and we're going to move to a smaller size opening stencil. So we're going to put out a thin layer of the permanent red violet, and we're going to move to a stencil with a little bit, it's a small pattern, but there's more opening, and then we're going to layer that on top of this. So this is the transparent color. So you will see the previous color through this. Okay, you can see that beautiful transparent color. And now we're starting to see some layering. So again, I'm gonna make sure that I get my fingertips in all the openings of all the spaces before I take the paper off. So I take a peek and I apply more pressure. And now you can see the layering. Because of the transparent paint, you can see all previous colors and layers through that. So we now have 2 layers on top of our solid base sheet. Okay, so our next layer is going to be another, this is a semi-transparent color, and it's the burnt sienna. And so that's gonna be a little bit less transparent, but it is a lighter color. It won't be as strong in its semi-transparency because it is a lighter value. I'll put a little bit more of that out. So now I've got a large opening stencil, and the large opening is going to provide heavy coverage. And because of that, we don't want to go too dark and we don't want to go too opaque. So we're going to layer that over this. And hopefully we can, even though we'll have large coverage, we should still be able to see the previous layers through it. Yes, that looks awesome. Thank God, Barb.
Yes, we're very grateful.
Very, very grateful. Okay.
What's the rule you made that you were going to show too? Because that's important.
You're getting ahead of me.
Sorry.
I got it.
Everybody needs to know that you're not infallible.
This is true. So now, even though we have large areas of coverage with a stencil with large openings, the fact that we use a lighter semi-transparent color allows everything to show through. Now, the mistake that I made last time was I used a semi-transparent color, but it was very dark value. So you can sort of see through it, but not really. So this is what happens if you layer in a large stencil with the wrong transparency or the wrong value. This Prussian blue pretty much blocked out everything underneath it. You can see the pattern in there. It's not like I put an opaque color through it, but it's pretty heavy and it blocked out. It doesn't look like this. Here we have another beautiful layer because it's a semi-transparent color and it's a lighter value. So we've got some great layering going on here.
That one is really amazing. You just see it all.
Yes, so far so good. So here's our cleanup sheet.
And boy, have you made some amazing cleanup and roll-off sheets.
Yeah, you gotta love amazing roll-off sheets, right? You can always use this for something else.
If you notice some missing, I had nothing to do with it.
She's got them in the bottom of her suitcase already.
Maybe.
So now the next color that we're gonna go to, we're gonna switch to a blue. So it's an ultramarine blue, but it is transparent. So it's not quite as dark as this. It's a little lighter, but this was semi-transparent and this is transparent. So we're really going to see completely through this. And because I'm going a little darker, I'm going to go with a stencil with a bit of a smaller opening. So I'm not going to put this through these large opening stencil. I'm going to come back to another patterns for layering stencil that is meant to be layered and has smaller openings. So this will be our transparent ultramarine blue. And this one, sorry, this is from the Dorothy series.
I wasn't going to say anything,
yeah,
but yes, it is.
It is from the Dorothy series, but it's definitely meant to be layered because of the small openings. It's meant to be layered with patterns, stencils with larger openings. So now we're going to put that transparent color over these layers, and we're going to switch from warm to cool colors. But ultramarine blue is a beautiful color. It's kind of a purpley blue. Oh, Barb, I love them when you pull up the corner and you get happy. Look at that. So again, I got to make sure I get all the paint out so I have a good pattern. So I lift it up and look, and if I see paint on the plate in those dots, I apply more pressure. Okay, so I think we're good. So now you can see that even though this looks darker because it's totally transparent, we see everything else through it. And it's not quite as vibrantly blue-purple because the brown and the sienna and those layers are showing through it. It is multiplying with what's below it, almost like stacks of stained glass or like layers of watercolor. So this blue is going to be multiplied with the browns and it changes its tone a little bit. But that looks really nice over that. Okay, so now our last layer, I am going to use an opaque color. But if I were to put an opaque color through this on our last layer, we would end up with something like that. I just want to have a small accent of an opaque color so that it doesn't block out everything underneath it. So this is totally opaque turquoise blue, and the stencil that I'm going to use has teeny tiny openings. So we're going to add just a very small amount of that so it does not block out all the beautiful layers we have already done underneath. And who doesn't like teal, Barb?
Not me. I love teal.
Everybody loves a little teal in their life. You know, there's a teal Keurig in this Airbnb.
Yes, there is.
It's pretty cool.
It's very interesting. And that color is so
beautiful, right? Now we're going to add a wee bit of an opaque color so that it doesn't have the opportunity to block out everything underneath it, but it does act as a beautiful accent because in its tiny marks, it will stand up over everything. Oh, we got to give it some more pressure. These ones with the little openings, you can't be gentle with them. You have to really press. And that's the beauty of the gel plate. It'll take the pressure. Okay, let's get some more pressure on there. Fingertips. Make sure you come all the way out to the edges. And I think it looks amazing. And here we go. Look at that. We have just a little bit of that turquoise blue and you don't see through it. So it stands up. Even on dark colors, it stands up. and you don't see anything below through it, but in a small, tiny application, it's just a lovely accent to those previous layers. Look at that, Barb.
I know. You know what I like about this? It looks very, very complex, but if you understand, which is what you're showing today, the difference between transparent and opaque and those variations in between, you can make that stand up and jump. I mean, it's just, it looks so complex, but it's just about layering and keeping that opacity in mind.
Absolutely. So our bottom layer was opaque, but it didn't cover anything because it's where we started. Then we went to transparent and semi-transparent lighter colors, and we did the ultramarine blue, which blended with the colors below it, so it doesn't really look like this purpley blue because it's totally transparent. And then we put that opaque color on top, and it really stands up and really looks like the color in the tube because it's not multiplying with what's below it. It is covering everything below it because it is opaque. So you just want to understand opaque versus translucent, opaque versus transparent, and semi-transparent in your layering, and then you will have success. And yeah,
that's real. And I will admit that I don't lean toward those ochres and those earth tones, but boy, do I like that.
Me too.
It's really nice.
Thanks. Can you see yourself in there?
Just barely.
We can't see in all these videos because the sun is like blaring and we are seeing our own reflection in the
phone.
In the phone.
Yeah.
So let's just hope we're in the screen.
We're hoping like heck.
We're hoping we're somewhere. If we're not in the screen, you know, we did our best.
Well, just listen, and we apologize for not being centered in the screen. So now you know opacity, transparency, and the ways that you can utilize them. And so we want you to go have fun. Go play with paint, go play with stencils, grab your gel plate, and go have a good time.
Go have a good time.
Yes.
Go willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly.
Is this our last video from Sedona?
It is. In fact, I'm already waving goodbye.
I don't know how it's ordered, though, in the publishing.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It could be the first one, but it's the last one we're making.
Yes, it is.
So the next time, after these videos, the next time you see us, we'll be coming from
beautiful downtown Sacramento. Well, not downtown, but one of the suburbs of Sacramento.
Glorious suburbs of Sacramento.
It works. It's a great place to work.
Yes, it's a great place to work.
All right, we'll see you then.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.